There's an analog horror series that I can't stop thinking about. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear something like that? Perhaps it's a series that kicked off the whole thing. A series that perfects the analog horror tropes. Something that makes it into its own thing, or an idea that resonates with your emotional core. Like horror itself, people love to relate, connect, and never stop thinking about the media they watch. Whether it's the whole package, a single episode, or a single moment or frame, analog horror is a beautiful thing to think about, and something that I believe will ring true even if there's so much muck and filth at the bottom of the barrel. Anyway, time to talk about Urbanspook. Urbanspook's The Painter is an analog horror series that is quite controversial. This is for the reasons you probably know why. It uses extreme disturbing horror and depictions of serious topics with the care of a baseball bat. However, despite all of it, it's something that I could never stop thinking about. And not just the series itself. I couldn't stop thinking about the creator, the drama, the videos, the discussions, the characters, the harm it caused, and its impact on the internet horror scene. So I thought, after some time thinking about it, I might as well take a look and deep dive into everything about this series, and everything surrounding it. I want to look into our reactions to the series, the videos that talk about it as well, because I think it tells us a story of something that I've noticed is going on over the last 2 years. So please, sit back, relax, and let's take a deep dive into The Painter. Hi, I'm Meadow. You may not know me, but soon you will. Today I'm covering The Painter by Urbanspook, which is a video that I've been teasing and researching off on the side for the last couple of months, and since the final episode released at the end of last year, I thought it was high time to actually kick this into high gear and dedicate a whole video about it. However, I will be laying some ground rules with the video first. 1. I will be referring to the analog horror series as The Painter and its creator as Urbanspook. I'm putting this at the front because a ton of people use Urbanspook for both the creator and the series, which I do think is fine, but I'd rather make sure to separate the two during my discussion to prevent any confusion. 2. This video will cover some really serious topics that I need to warn you about again. I have put a disclaimer at the start of this video, but I'm saying this here again just to say that this video will discuss in particular SA and CSA. If these topics are too much for you, then please watch another video of mine. 3. Don't go harass anyone that I talk about in my video. Like, I will cover some drama and react to some other people's videos on the topic, but please don't use it as a way to incite harassment onto people. I absolutely do not condone it. Thank you. And 4. Please like and subscribe, turn on the bell, share this with your neighbors, and comment about how cool and awesome and swag I am. Now that these rules have been set, it's time to start off with the very beginning, with The Painter itself. In order for us to understand my later points and be on the same page, let's analyze the whole series. Starting off with the one that kicked off this whole shenanigan, Faces. The first video starts off with a disclaimer before going into the opening section. 6 months ago, police found 3 being stored away in an abandoned storage area, each titled after recent murders. The first victim was Carla Gray, found with 36 stab wounds to the face and all of her teeth removed. On the back of the first painting, the title Carla's Teeth was written. This is the painting. Second victim was Jackie Graham, found drowned with 27 stab wounds in the perineum. That's the fancy term for the taint. She was alive during the stabbing. Her painting was titled Floating Jackie. The last victim was James Miller, found with his face torn off and his wrist slit open. Autopsy showed that James was alive for several days without a face. The third painting was named James' Secret Face. 2 months after the original paintings were discovered, more were found with each not related to any known cases at the time. The following paintings and their titles were shown to us now. Waxed Old Tom, Lisa's Secret Face, Hanging Jimmy, Daniel After the Fire, Jennifer's Last Stare, Scream Maggie Scream. When the police decided to go to the public to identify any missing people with the paintings, they were then sent 3 photos of the victims as they were actually depicted in real life. These were Jackie Graham, James Miller, and someone called Jimmy. Stop staring at me with those big old eyes. However, before the tape ends, a final painting is recently discovered. This was located 2 days before the recording was made, and it was titled Self-Portrait. The first video starts off with a pretty strong concept: a serial killer who murders their victims and paints their death, either depicting it realistically or metaphorically. Paintings that go with these deaths are also really interesting. I want to point out Floating Jackie as a good example of this. The red water representing the blood staining the water after being stabbed in what I can only describe as the no-no era. The face being pale white and almost looking serene. This painting is definitely inspired by Japanese art depicting geishas and the like, but I also think it's reminiscent of the painting Ophelia by John Everett Millais, with how the person is framed in the painting. I also want to praise the self-portrait too. The dark red skin, the wind blowing the hair away, while the person in the painting looks almost focused on something beyond our sight, and the dark sunken eyes that sort of represent a deep darkness within the character in question, or even in some cases, death. Yes, I know about the twist about this painting, shut up, we'll get there at the end, don't you worry. The next video, The Lighthouse, starts off with an introduction to a police officer called Bill Collins, who has gone missing with the rest of his entire family. In fact, he was the one to have discovered the self-portrait in the first video. They did manage to locate one of his daughters, but sadly they were too late as the 2-month-old baby was found hanging in the attic. Okay, I can't take this seriously after watching the Creepcast video on this series.
Baby was swinging in the attic, attached to the ceiling fan at the highest speed. So I just imagine it's like around the deal.
They did manage to locate the car several days later, but with a painting inside depicting the child, Long-Necked Angel. A bit on the nose there, but sure, whatever. Sometimes we don't paint masterpieces all the time. After some time in the investigation, they located bodies in the abandoned lighthouse with a strange red abstract painting on the door. They managed to locate the dead bodies of Lisa and Jennifer White, the burnt corpse of Daniel Williams, and a barrel filled with the remains of the Collins family. Among the chaos, they actually managed to locate 4 photos by the barrel, 3 of them depicting the final moments of the Collins family. I don't know why one of them looks like a generic creepypasta image, but we'll just move on from that. The final photo located isn't of the Collins family or any of the other victims, but of the killer themselves, staring at the camera with a dead expression on their face. This video was basically like the first episode, but with some goofier paintings and expressions mixed in with it. I understand some of it is due to the outside influences warping how these images are perceived, especially with long-necked Angel, but when this video first released, that fucking ghoul-ass photo was still really silly to look at. It looks like James Charles without any lipstick or eyeshadow on him. To give the episode some credit, I do love the red abstract painting on the door, the way half of it just looks hidden and almost gives it this unfinished feeling to it. There's also a fan theory that the painting on the door was painted with the blood of the Collins family, which I think is pretty cool. I would love to believe that. Anyway, we'll move on to the next video, where the investigation gets turned upside down. The clue. Yes, that is the next episode in the series. Don't look at the playlist or the channel. I swear to God, if you even look at it, even if I told you not to, I will kill. In this video, we are introduced to PI Sean Kane, who has been helping with the investigation and locating victims with the paintings previously shown. One of them that the video focuses on is that of Tom Harris, where he was found encased in a pile of hardened wax with his arms and eyelids cut off. Oh, and that's just a random third arm that the police don't know who it belongs to, and apparently the killer just brought up this pile of wax through climbing up a drain pipe up to the 3rd floor? This is fucking ridiculous! This kill is arguably the most absurd out of the whole series, as if you think about it more than 5 seconds, your brain begins to explode. How long did it take for all of that wax to melt and harden? How many candles did the killer need to bring up the drain pipe to do all of this? He died from suffocation, so did he start with the head first and then did the rest of the body? Why is his arms cut off? Well, who was the 3rd arm? I'm in two parks with this murder because it makes no sense on a grounded perspective, but it's so over the top, so stupid that it just wraps around into being the most funniest shit ever. However, this is the only time the kills get this silly and Looney Tunes-esque, which is a big shame. Anyways, back on track. A week after this discovery, Sean went missing and the police came to check on him after his dog was barking for 9 hours. They then discovered that the dog's legs were all broken, and that there was blood all over the bedroom. However, they did find a 2 written in the blood trail. I do wonder what this could mean. In the bedroom as well, they managed to locate another painting called The Man in the Pipes, where it looks like that Kendall guy from Beauty and the Beast was in that one YouTube creepypasta image.
What the fuck is this?
After searching the house, they managed to find a broken camera that Sean placed in the basement, but they only managed to recover one photo, depicting a weird guy with some sort of face mask covering the camera. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 2 killers and not 1. I don't know, just a hunch, maybe. I don't know about that. Okay, this video is the one that is the most silliest in nature. The over-the-top wax kill and some of the paintings kind of looking more silly than scary really makes the video the weakest out of the bunch in terms of the atmosphere that the other videos were building up. I will comment on some of the comedic aspects of the series during my thoughts on the whole series, but I'm gonna leave it there for now. The video begins with 3 people, Tina and Flora Rosenberg, and Tina's boyfriend, Jack Stryker, going on a road trip before they suddenly go missing. The police manage to find the car, and inside it is a painting called Flower Face Flora. While investigating the woods, they hear screaming, and they manage to locate Tina, who is still alive, tied to a tree with her feet and arms cut off. They also see the dead body of Flora, whose face was smashed in with a hammer. When returning to the car after searching the woods for the culprit, they find another painting that wasn't there before, this one titled Long Jack. Once Tina had been rescued and recovered from the attack, she gave another account of what took place.
I remember waking up in the car. Jack was gone and I could hear someone approaching. Next thing I remember, I was tied to that tree. I was injected with something. I could hear my sister screaming. She was screaming for our mom. Oh, Flora. I don't know. I remember whispering in her face. Oh, God. Oh, God, her face.
After giving her testimony of what happened, the police shows a sketch of the killer based on Tina's description, showing us that this is the same killer from the photograph in the lighthouse. This video is the one I personally feel has the most potential out of everything that I'll cover here. Tina's point of view is just something that has no voiceover, where it desperately needed some, which is annoying because in the later videos we do see a clip of Tina actually talking to the camera and actually saying something that will come up later.
Those people took me to hell, and once you've been in hell, you never come back.
Also, something worth noting is that when Jack's photo is shown in the video clip, it starts to flicker. This never comes up in the story. I don't know why it does it here. Also, apparently this is the first tape chronologically, according to Urbanspook, so make of that what you will. This video is arguably the turning point in the series, as every video after this one starts to get more twisted and violent. I will be saying this now that this video in particular has some really messed up shit in it, and that it even has been age restricted as well. This is your final warning before continuing. Anyway, let's see what horrors await us. The police are investigating the disappearance of a former police officer, Ian Ford, and his wife, May. You now know why this episode is called Pigs. They enter the barn that the couple owns, and they discover a horrible scene. They find dead animals, one of a horse that died from a sildenafil overdose, and in the same stall, they find a corpse of May Ford, who had died via internal bleeding, and her hands were ripped off just for good measure. You may be thinking about what happened to May, but don't worry, the killers will pretty much tell you that quite soon. During the investigation of the barn, they managed to locate the head of Fiona Ford, who is the granddaughter of the Fords, and is only just mentioned for the first time right now. They then come across the malformed faces nailed to the walls, along with dead pig heads as well. In the center of the room is a huge pig, and inside of it is the dead body of Ian Ford. I'm glad to know that the killers are ACAB. Love that for them. They find paintings in the attack room and showcase them to us in full detail. Some of the deaths that we have just witnessed, some that are super abstract, and others that make me think that the killers really like to make crash jokes all the time. Someone please give them a Netflix comedy special. During all of this, there is music playing, but it's not the dark, brooding ambient music that you're listening to right now. It's actually this! Very fitting, I guess. Before the tape ends, police discovered a destroyed tape that they managed to partially recover. It is revealed that the tape contains footage of the killer that is wearing the masks of their victims, gloating to the camera before disappearing into the darkness. So that was a lot. Not in terms of the story, God no, but a lot of violence in the violence section. Wow, my writing is so good. With the vivid and detailed descriptions, actual photos of the crime scenes, and the more disturbing contexts of the paintings themselves, this video took the violent aspects that was teased in the earlier videos to the extreme. A lot of people in the comments were disturbed by this video in particular, but we'll discuss that more in depth later in the video. Yes, I'm saying that we'll discuss it later a lot, trust me, I know, but we will do it. Just keep watching, we will eventually get there. The video begins with the police discussing several murders that happened recently, one of them being a teacher called Isabel Jackson. While on a 911 call, she gave the wrong address, which actually led to another crime scene. The scene was apparently so disturbing that one of the dispatch officers had to request leave afterwards. This was a murder of a family of 3: Janice, Paul, and Zeke. Janice was strangled by her own umbilical cord, and her unborn fetus was forcibly removed from her uterus, cut up into several pieces around the house, and the husband, Paul, had the fetus's head shoved into his throat and his mouth soon shut, so he died from asphyxiation. I don't like this murder scene, no. This one grosses me out so much, Jesus Christ. Oh, also they couldn't find Zeke. I wonder why. Also, there's another painting here, but honestly I don't care about that one, to be honest. After finally locating where Isabel lives, they find the headless body of her husband with a painting replacing his head instead. After locating her body, in which a hole was drilled into her head, they find a note inside of that hole, which read,
I live where I can't breathe, and I eat without teeth. What am I?
There are 2 answers to this riddle: a whale or a fetus. Both of them not very good considering the circumstances. However, a huge piece of evidence was discovered at this crime scene. 2 different footprints were found in the bloody mess, confirming to the police that there were 2 killers working in tandem with each other. Wowee, what a surprise! After everything in this episode has concluded, we are then given the full call transcript of the 911 call Isabel gave. I'm actually going to play it in its entirety because I genuinely believe this is one of the best segments in the whole series, or even in analog horror in general, so fair warning, if you do want to skip it, here's this time code, but if you want to listen to it, here it is.
What's your emergency? Okay, now, what's the address?
They killed my husband.
Oh, okay, the police are on their way. Do you have somewhere to hide?
I locked myself in the bathroom.
Okay, good. Are you able, do you know they're there?
Yes, please.
Okay, ma'am, the police are on their way. I need you to stay calm for me, okay? What's your name?
Isabel Jackson.
Okay, Isabel, do you have anything to defend yourself with? The what? Isabel, do you have anything to defend yourself with? Okay, listen, stay calm. Are there any windows in your bathroom? Isabel? Hello? Hello? Isabel?
I fucking love this phone call. The voice acting in this section is absolutely brilliant, as the person playing Isabel is really talented. The range that she has with her subtle cries, her screams, and just her mumbling to herself makes it feel like you know and understand the pain that she's in with her final moments. I also need to praise the sound design in this too, because of how you hear the drill mixed in with Isabel's scream, and both of them almost combine into this harsh noise that I just absolutely love. Okay, one more video before we take a break from the recap of the whole thing. So, let's go meet this video, shall we? I really love making jokes here. As the video starts, we discover the murder scene of Dr. Fred Baker, someone who is revealed to have been stealing medication from his workplace. They find him with his face without any skin and a painting showcasing his cat. From the title alone, we can probably figure out what happened to the cat. It then cuts to another murder scene of George White, who was found with his face cut off and 487 stab wounds across his whole body. Oh, and 4 of them had that certain white juice in them. Great. Love that. Oh, and during the autopsy, they found several photographs depicting the deaths of several other victims. One of them just looks like a yassified Germa.
If I chop you up in a meat grinder...
The final crime scene of the video is that of Sarah Stone and her husband Michael, who were abducted from their house. There was a struggle, but the police managed to find a camera outside of their front door. The final moments of this video is that of the killers preparing to enter the house, one of them that looks to be missing an arm, and the other a gaunt-looking figure with long black hair and wearing a white gown. I'll take a moment here to say that this animation is pretty good, as the almost photorealistic view of the doorway is mixed together with the painted look of the killers that I actually really like. And I do wish more stuff in the series used this painted look with the killers in actual footage. But okay, let's take a break from the series for now, as with the videos we have shown, we have learnt enough to discuss the pros and cons of everything that we have all just watched. Before I can talk about my gripes with the series, I want to say that I don't want to completely shit on the series, as I do think there's some great moments and good aspects of the series. One of them that doesn't get mentioned as much is the music and sound design, because oh my god, I actually really like the music for the series. I've actually been listening to some of the songs while working on this video, and I just love them even outside of the context of the series. The one that you've heard a lot is titled Beneath, and it's this droney track that has a lot of dark atmosphere to it, and the sounds added later to the track adds to this griminess as you see the paintings that are shown to you in the video. I'd also argue that Beneath acts as the leitmotif of the whole series, as it does get reused again in the later episodes. Other standouts is the harsh noise track titled Pigs. I do absolutely love this track, since it gives me the same kind of dread as like musicians like Lingua Ignota, specifically on the album All Bitches Die, and Ubera does. This small tension at the start that gives way into this noisy track with glitched, harsh screams mixed within. However, one nitpick is that it doesn't fit the whole aesthetic of the tape, which is a real shame. One more song that I want to shout out is Wail. It's almost this ambient folk track with these ritualistic chanting that makes it feel like I'm stuck in this trance. Something that I think fits well in this type of genre would be the works of Natural Snow Buildings and their album Daughter of Darkness. If you like the song, then give them a try. I highly recommend it. Especially if you have like 7 hours to kill. Also, I love the sound effects that are on Meat as the video continues, where you can hear both the killers just breathing in each ear with distant barking, as well as the video references a dog that was heard by the witnesses. Also, once again, the phone call is so fucking good that I want to gush about it again. But sadly, I'm not able to do it as much, since apparently the voice actress for the phone call hasn't been identified outside of Urbanspook saying that he found her on Fiverr, which kinda sucks, not gonna lie. The main praise that people would say in reaction videos to this series is that the art is really, really good in most cases. I am also in agreement with this, and while I have been making funny little jabs at some of the paintings, a huge chunk of them is really, really good, and I have to give Urbanspook his flowers regarding this area. Again, the big standouts for me would be Flowing Jackie, as mentioned before. I love this piece, and I honestly want it hung up in my house. I am being serious about this. Also, we're gonna get to the merch side of things, don't you worry. Anyway, those are my praises with the series out of the way. It's time to talk about what I am not a big fan of. And these complaints I feel are detrimental to how I enjoyed the series. For starters, the plot structure of the episode is just not that good and pretty repetitive. The timeline of the story being told keeps jumping all over the place in some of these episodes. Another issue is the visual department of the series. A lot of the visuals being shown to us outside of the paintings is just white text on a black background with occasional images to describe a certain guy. It doesn't give us much to go off with in terms of imagination, and if there's something, don't worry because the writing will over-explain every detail, giving us nothing else to imagine. It's also why the analysis section was pretty bare bones, because there's literally nothing I can do to make this better, I'm sorry. Speaking of which, the shock horror. One of the major complaints about the series is how boring it describes its shocking horror to its audience. A lot of the descriptions can be boiled down to is, oh, he got stabbed a lot. There's even a huge running joke whenever a video gets made on this series, where it's like,
his face was cut off, his ass cheeks were cut off, his mouth was cut off, his big baby toe was cut off, his eyelashes was cut off.
Okay, you get the idea. The way this is just explained to the audience is just really boring and doesn't give us much imagination to go off. And I feel like that's a major detriment to how we as an audience can feel horror and disgust with what's going on. Also, there's the comedic aspects of the series, and they're kind of incredibly jarring, and I'm not sure if it works in the long run. Of course, you have the long-necked angel kill, the wax doll kill. Outside of that, goofiness doesn't mix with the dark, grounded approach with the series. If there were more moments that had a little bit of a splat-stick approach, maybe I would enjoy it more, but these moments do kind of stick out like a sore thumb. One final note I want to touch on is, well, there isn't really any characters that we can root for or empathize with. A lot of the characters such as Sean, and well, basically everyone else in the series gets introduced at the beginning of the episode, and then immediately gets killed or tortured, and then never gets mentioned again. It kinda sucks, because learning what these characters are, what their likes, personality, and quirks are, is what helps us understand and feel for the characters whenever the story hits a gruesome moment. Hell, there's some characters in the series that literally get introduced as they are dead, like with Fiona. Her first mention of her is when we find her head. This structure doesn't give us much to chew on, and that's really unfortunate. Arguably the characters we know and follow is ironically the killers, but we still don't know much about them outside of them just, killing people and painting their final moments. So, that's it, right? That's all of the complaints and discussions around the series. Poorly written structure and over-explained shock horror. Okay, not quite. I haven't been entirely truthful of my recap and retelling of the whole series. It's because I left out one video and a certain painting in the first episode as well. I've been saving these two for the specific moment because they are the main two things that have drastically changed how the whole series is perceived from a wider audience. These two things made the series from a poorly written series to what people argue to be an exploitative mess. There's no more beating around the bush. It's finally time to talk about Fucktoy Cory. Oh, and In the Walls, don't forget about that. Cory is a painting that is shown in the first episode and looks quite silly, but when the episode In the Walls was released, it was revealed that Cory was an 11-year-old child and that him and his twin sister were killed, had their bodies sewn together, and that his private parts were removed in a horrible and disgusting fashion. I do not like this. And most people didn't. While Pigs was the major turning point that focused more of the violence in the series, In the Walls was where that exploitation first began to expose itself. The discussion of CSA and SA in the series all stems on how the death of Cory is handled, and I personally think it hasn't been handled well at all. To explain this, I'll be basing this off a basic model that I learnt about from the video that Branomander did regarding his full analysis of Megan is Missing, which I'll be calling the Predator versus Victim perspective. In his video, he explains how the film is constructed to blend both the Predator's point of view with that of the viewer's own perspective, while not allowing the audience to view what the victim's perspective is like. I honestly feel like this framework is key to understanding why Cory and many other victims of the painter simply don't work on a conceptual level. For one, the only times we ever see the victims in the series is both after their deaths and through the paintings that the painter leaves behind. And it's through this where the lines are being blurred. Due to how the story is written, we are never given the chance to empathize or understand how the victims feel and what they were like before the deaths. There are exceptions to this, like with Tina, Isabel, and arguably Sean, but in most of the cases, the only times we see them are the paintings themselves. As such, the viewer simply has no choice but to view the victims through the eyes of the painter, and thus blending the perspectives of both the killer and the audience's role. Throughout this video and the series as a whole, we only know two things about Cory. One is that he's a child, and two is that he was assaulted in a very violent and sexual manner. Well, there's actually three things. There's actually the fact of his name, Cory Beck. Well, that's because it's a reference to an animator called SpazKid, who regularly collaborates with Oni Plays. I don't know about you, but honestly, for most people who come in to watch the series, they're probably not going to know who the fuck this guy is. Then there's the other conversation to be had with the series, and whether or not you can depict these kinds of topics well in a horror medium. The answer to that is, well, you can do that, but you need to do it tastefully and have a lot of care and thought put into it, which the painter fails to do, in my honest opinion. The way the subject is treated is pretty sudden and just feels wrong in this case. There's also the fact that the episode is the only one in the entire series that does not have a viewer discretion is advised warning that every other episode in the series has. The one that arguably is the most shocking moment in the series, and people aren't just warned about it. I find that really weird. Why did he not do that? Now, I don't want to keep going off about how poorly the painter handles the topic of SA, and especially CSA, since many of the videos just do that. Instead, I want to focus on some examples of games that I think handle this idea in a far better way than the painter. So, let's turn that dial and talk about mouthwashing. Mouthwashing is a 2024 psychological horror game made by the Swedish developers Wrong Organ. In it, you are introduced to the character Anya, the sole medic of the crew and the only woman in a group of men. For a basic rundown of the plot, the captain, Curly, crashes a cargo ship into the meteorite, and after this incident, his best friend and co-pilot Jimmy tries to take control of the situation, but at the end, it all crumbles apart. Throughout the story, you begin to understand how Anya feels and how she fits in within the framework of the crew. Anya, despite failing to graduate from medical school, is someone who is able to keep alive a burnt man without any feet or arms, which is some real serious skill. She's someone who is kind, caring, and a little bit timid. In Q&As done by Wrong Organ, she was described as someone who would binge eat fast food and watch shitty reality TV to relax, and she has also read a ton of psychology books to pass the time. However, throughout the game, she is instead belittled by Jimmy, making remarks about her not being able to give Curly his medication, and criticizing her at every turn of the story. At other points, people like Swansea, the ship mechanic, cuts her off whenever she tries to speak her own mind. However, at the crucial moment in the story, prior to the crash, it is revealed to the player that Anya was sexually assaulted by Jimmy and is now carrying his child. She told this to Curly, who instead of trying to comfort her and protect her, he instead tried to fix it, which then led to the events of the crash and for the plot to unfold. The whole story surrounding Anya and assault is a key part to the entire plot of the game. A story about taking responsibility, what happens when men don't hold other men accountable for the crimes they committed, and how women feel when they aren't taken seriously. When Anya tells Curly about her assault, he immediately tries to be naive before being forced to confront the fact that his best friend did this to her. But afterwards, he tries to make excuses, say that he's his best friend, that he'll talk to him, and so much more. With this context of the abuse, it's no wonder why Anya acts the way she does around Jimmy post-crash. There's times where she tries to praise him whenever he does something, a technique called fawning, a way to avoid any potential conflict with Jimmy, but unfortunately for her, it never really works out in this way. At the end of the story, she locks herself away from the rest of the crew, and in a desperate act to escape from it all, she ends her own life, with the same medication that was used to keep Curly alive. The difference between how mouthwashing handles SA and how the painter handles it is apparent. While mouthwashing is able to put the perspective and empathy onto Anya through its storytelling and the non-linear perspective that the game employs, the painter, however, simply lacks this empathy. The sexual violence done to the victims is simply done to elicit a reaction from the audience, to not make the people feel upset towards the pain of the victims, but to feel disgust and hatred towards the killers. There is also another reason why I brought up mouthwashing in this context. A major complaint about the usage of CSA and SA in the painter is due to the fact that Cory is a product to be sold online on Urbanspook's store. Now, I don't want to come off as saying that he shouldn't be selling this kind of stuff. We live in a capitalist society where any and all of our hobbies have to be commodified into a product to be sold. I am also aware that he was selling this prior to the release of the episode under a different name. However, despite this, it feels wrong to profit off something that depicts a violent sexual assault onto a child, and especially so with slapping it onto a t-shirt. Mouthwashing also went through a similar backlash with the release of the Anya Nenderin, where one of the faceplates is that of her when she took her own life. This reaction to the Nenderin is very similar to that of the merch of Cory, discussions how you shouldn't make merch of people who suffered through sexual assault. However, there's a major difference between these two examples. Firstly, the depiction of Anya dying is a faceplate that you can swap to. You don't have to put her in this position if you don't want to. And secondly, Anya is a whole character. She's someone who has a story to tell, her interactions with the crewmates, the games she plays, and the care that she puts in to keep Curly alive. She is someone who is more than just her sexual assault. The only thing we know about Cory is the sexual assault. We don't know what Cory was like. We don't know what movies he enjoyed, the relationship between his twin sister, the banter with the friends that he surrounded himself with. The only thing that the audience knows about Cory is the over-explained details of how he was ripped apart and sexually violated. There is also a counter-argument to the people that have used regarding both the merch of Cory and Anya, and that's, they're not real. They are fictional characters. And that's true. Cory Beck isn't a real person. Sort of. Anya isn't a real person. They are both fictional characters in a fictional setting in two very separate horror media. But the violence that was inflicted on them is real. People who have undergone the same struggles as both Cory and Anya are real people, and say that these characters aren't real as a way to diminish the complaints that these survivors have regarding the merch of these characters isn't great, and I'd even argue is doing a similar kind of thing to what Curly does in the story. There's also the consideration about how the writers of these kinds of stories can use their own experiences to discuss these very same topics. Hell, there's even pieces of media where the author puts themselves inside of the story to showcase the trauma that they've been through. Even if the character they portray isn't real, the experiences that they endured are. I hope this explains my feelings on the whole topic. If you want to learn more about mouthwashing, then I highly recommend these videos as they go into a lot of concepts that I haven't really covered here. And if you'd like to learn more about the whole Anya Nindarin situation, then I recommend checking out Spoony Play's video on the topic, as they go into much better detail on the subject than I ever could. Now that I have talked to death about this concept, there's a burning question in my mind, and probably yours too. Who the hell even is Urbanspook? Urbanspook, also known as Urban Slug, is the creator of The Painter. He's an artist, an animator, a musician, a horror enthusiast, and most importantly, an epic gamer. I'm not even joking here, he legitimately put that as his Ko-fi page bio? A lot isn't known about the creator, but from bits and pieces, we can gather that he isn't from a primarily English-speaking country, as he says that English isn't his native language in a comment that we'll touch on in a moment. He did later state that he's actually from Sweden in a Q&A he did. Usually people end there and just go straight into his online presence with his Instagram and Twitter account, but a lot of people don't mention is that he has a YouTube account before Urbanspook was a thing, that being Urban Slug. On this channel, he primarily did animation videos dating back to all the way to 14 years ago, with weird video titles like Nasty Old Man, Crazy Poop Guy, and Beach Pedophile. I have no words. However, the biggest videos on this channel is usually Dark Souls animations, and then also Rule 34 Game Grumps animations. I'm not even kidding, this is just way more horrifying than anything in The Painter, to be honest. I will have to say that his animations closer to when The Painter first released were pretty good, in regards to that cartoonish way that honestly wouldn't feel out of place in Smiling Friends. Okay, so now that we got that small history lesson out of the way, it's time to do something I would never thought I would have to do. Talk about drama. In mid-September 2023, a Twitter user decided to post one of my favorite kinds of posts, engagement bait, specifically about analog horror.
What's an analog/digital horror opinion that will get you like this?
This is then followed by an image of Patrick being held in captivity, looking a bit depressed. Probably because he's in an engagement bait post. However, there was a YouTuber, and someone who I previously covered on this channel, Pastra, quote retweeted the post with the following messages.
We need to stop praising series that rely entirely on shock value to carry their horror. Stuff like Urbanspook drives me nuts because the only horror it has relies entirely on trying to describe the most vile thing possible with little else. Not only is that just lazy, but in my opinion, it also encourages other creators to attempt to make work similar to it, which just leads to more lazy and distasteful projects being created. To anyone telling me this is a cold take, please go look up Urbanspook on YouTube. What you will find is video after video either praising or reacting to his work in a positive light. People may be critical of it, as they should be, but the general consensus is not negative.
With the last post, they are kind of right. There are videos where there was some praise for the story, and content creators such as Gooseboost have covered the series on his channel. Also, apparently Minaxa also made a video on The Painter but has since been privated. But with how Pastra worded this, it is possible that their audience could see these comments and go to these videos to react negatively to them. But, you know, this comment could have been the end of it, a simple quote retweet to an engagement bait post. That is, until Urbanspook, on his Twitter account, replied with the infamous post.
You're such a fucking pussy. Just because extreme horror doesn't fit into your little autistic fairy horror case doesn't mean that there isn't a place for it. Use your platform to talk about things you like instead of shitting on actual creators. I don't know if I can say this word, I am not Australian.
Surprising to no one, this didn't go down too well. As soon as the post came out, a ton of the online horror community and many other analog horror creators came down on this to make fun and critique of the series as a result. Even Pastra returned to reply to the comment.
Your work is distasteful garbage and I will treat it as such. If you can't handle people being critical of your work, which you have clearly shown to be the case, then maybe you shouldn't be posting it.
From what Urbanspook has spoken about the situation, he claims that Pastra has been talking behind his back regarding the series before this post was made, and also stating that he'll be assholes to assholes. He also took issue with people calling the series nothing but shock value, while not acknowledging the work and effort into the series. It's why I talked about how much I like the art, the sound design, and some of the scenes in the series because I do think it's worthy of praise. At the time, Urbanspook essentially became the guy to mock for a day, while creators such as Martin Walls joining in on the fun, as well as Ches Kids who decided to break character and tell him to go fuck himself, which is very funny. Since this incident, whenever people brought up the drama or made fun of the series on Twitter, he would basically come around to make fun of them back at them, calling them furries, using ableist slurs, or comparing them to Fucktoy Cory, or calling them furries again. However, as of recently, he has since wiped his Twitter presence, and mainly chills out on his Instagram. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? This drama happened nearly 3 years ago, and honestly, Pastra and Urbanspook have both since apologized to each other and have made amends. And to be honest, it does sound like I am unearthing old drama for no reason but to cause more strife within the community. However, there is a reason. And that reason is because of the YouTube videos. After the drama occurred, a whole wash of YouTube videos covering the analog horror series began to emerge. Some that simply openly mocked the series and the creator with the infamous memes.
Gets criticized once, fucking dies.
Others went in with a more comprehensive approach covering the series in full, talking about the drama and other aspects of the series too. The video that I remember watching at the time is the video done by Lazy Bedhead, which I'll be mainly covering for this section. There are other videos that act more as quick videos simply discussing that the premise could have been good. There's even one that brought up the series in conjunction with other extreme media like Aaron Beauregard's Playground. And there were other videos that were just clearly comedic videos that weren't meant to be taken seriously. A common theme throughout all of these videos is their emphasis on the Fucktoy Cory section, which I do think is worth discussion alone, and they also discuss shock horror and shock value in these kinds of horror videos. A lot of them do focus on the inclusions of topics such as SA and CSA, but I think there are other examples out there that I can point to. Some analog horror series can use depictions of child death that is done in a completely brutal way, such as cannibalism, and there are others that warp the perception of a cherished figure into something that they would absolutely never do, like killing their spouse. However, a lot of these videos tend to fall into the trap of, hey guys, all shock horror and all shock value is bad, and I don't really believe that assessment. I don't believe that shock value is bad in of itself. Another thing is that comments in these videos state that the killers in the painter really feel like Mary Sue's, characters who act as perfect human beings that share a lot of comparisons with that of the creator and having no weaknesses whatsoever. There's a pretty good video done by Overly Sarcastic Productions that I'd recommend you check out if you're interested in the topic. This is for me to say that I personally do not believe that they're Mary Sue's or whatever male counterpart to it. Are they characters made by Urbanspook and act as the main figurehead to the story? Yeah, that's true, but it really doesn't feel like they are characters that are a vehicle for the author's desires, wants, and specifically, fetishes. There's also something that I've noticed a lot throughout these videos, and that is the fact they believe that the increase of violence and horror, specifically in the Pigs episode, is meant to be a major middle finger to the audience.
At these points, viewers were assuming that Urbanspook was simply adding more grotesque imagery and descriptions just for the sake of adding shock value and to be a middle finger to those snowflakes who dare criticize him. This kind of shock content is very much seen in episode 6.
This video feels like a mental break in visual form. I'm going off of opinion here, but I feel like this video was a giant fuck you to everyone that hated Spook series. It's not scary, loud music and jump scares.
Now, for full clarity, I did believe this at the time, but now, after thinking about it and analyzing the videos more, I don't really buy it anymore. These videos came out before the drama happened, and while yes, there is a possibility that Urbanspook unconsciously upped the ante with the violence as a response to the hate he was getting, but to me, it honestly feels like a natural progression to me in hindsight. I think a lot of people believe this was the case due to the drama and his poor reaction to criticism, and that aspect influencing how they viewed the media. Another video that got popular around this time was Wendy Goon's video, where he compared it with Greylock. Look, I talked about Greylock before in an older video of mine, go watch that one. The guy who made it is a right-wing weirdo. Anyway, back to Urbanspook. Specifically with this video, Urbanspook replied to it with his own comment and talked about some of the common talking points about his series. Some of the things he clarified are things like the idea of him not caring about the series, him talking about how he age-restricted episode 6 himself, and that it was planned out before the controversy, and most importantly, that his Twitter account was just a way to troll and to not take him seriously on Twitter. At the time, a lot of people didn't buy this, me included. However, thinking about it, and as time has passed, and it really does seem like a majority of his outlandish comments that get shared around are from his Twitter account, the more I started to believe him on this aspect. Now, do I believe he is an edgelord? Yes. Do I believe that despite him being autistic, he uses a lot of ableist language to shit-talk others? Also yes. However, considering how he has now responded to comments about the whole situation on sites like Instagram and Reddit, and compare that to how he did it on Twitter, and I think there is some merit to what he is saying. There's also the fact that, well, he's left Twitter too. A thing that everyone should really do at this point. However, there are holes in this defense. There's examples of this where he one time said AI-generated take on a video criticizing his series, plus being a troll on Twitter doesn't immediately absolve you of anything, to be quite frank. So I still agree with people at the time, and he did come off as a major ass. However, he has made several comments about the whole situation, has regretted the words that he has said, and well, both him and Pastra did make amends. These are all of the main points that I've noticed in the majority of these videos, as a good chunk of them is just going over the plot of the story and say things that I usually agree with. Except whatever the fuck Papo said in this intro.
This is Terrifier 2, a 2022 slasher film about a clown serial killer named Art who commits violence just because. It's gross and gory for the sake of it being gory. One of these is a thriller classic. One of these is a borderline snuff film. Borderline snuff film.
What the fuck?
Okay. Let's stop talking about other people's videos about the painter. Let's talk about the painter, because all these videos took place before a certain video that, for a brief time, completely changed what people thought about the series. And also the finale. So, let's finally talk about the final 2 episodes. Hell begins just like every other Painter video. A small description about the location that the police will explore. The police then enters in an abandoned textiles and paint factory as it was reported that there were trespassers on the location. Then, we are greeted with something not seen in the series up until this point. Actual camera footage. From just showing actual footage of the crime scene, exploring the depths of this lair, uncovering the secrets adds so much more to the video compared to just simple images and the stereotypical white text on black background. Which is still there, mind you, but the actual footage gives us much more to chew on. One thing I'll point out in the footage is the usage of the censoring and blurring, which I think adds to the horror. Not showing us the true reality of these body parts do add a bit of realism to it, I feel like. As the cameraman approaches the lair, we find photos of someone wearing a gimp outfit next to a decomposing body. Then we get the first of many returning characters in the series, Cory and Maggie Beck. Why are these the first two that are brought back? I don't know, cool I guess. The next returning character is that of Jim Lee, who is being hung on the same rope as an unidentified body. That's right, this is most likely Hanging Jimmy. This is just like Smash Bros. Ultimate, but way gorier. Everyone! After continuing, they manage to locate several paintings, including one that looks to be unfinished. These paintings are then shown to us, including one that we'll be quite familiar with soon. In the next room, a family of 4 is found dead with a chain dragged through their bodies, and each with a different stage of decomposition. In the basement, the bodies of Sarah Stone and her husband are found together in a loop human centipede style, almost like a stone loop. If the metaphor was too heavy-handed, don't worry, they also shoved rocks down their throats too. Do you get it? The video then finally concludes its tour with seeing the words, "Once you've been to hell, you never come back," written on the walls of the basement. Something that Tina said in an interview about the experience she had. Good thing I referenced it earlier. I did Urbanspook's job for him. Realizing that she's in trouble, Officer Nathan Cole enters Tina's house and encounters both the killers. One of them tries to attack him, but he quickly disposes of him. The other then finally deciding to give up and surrender to the police. It is revealed in the final minute of the video that the killers' names are Mona Lanius and Bill Collins? Yeah, so the Bill Collins in episode 2 didn't actually die, but in fact decided to kill his own family and become an evil, gross creature evil dude with a missing arm along with Mona. This is a really good twist. Thumbs up. And guess what? Urbanspook already planted this in one of his earlier videos. In the video Pigs, during the soundtrack, you could hear weird static that comes up every now and then. Listen. This was actually Morse code, and when deciphered, it read, "I am Bill Collins." This shit was already being teased back in Pigs. I really like this hidden fact a lot, and I'm kind of surprised not many people brought this up, because this is something that a lot of people wanted from the series, and, well, it was right there, under our own noses. Speaking of sound design, one of the key things about the ending is that Tina was stabbed in the eyes and ears, and didn't know that she was being rescued by the police, and so, throughout the ending, you can hear her screaming her lungs out, unaware of what transpired. It's really unsettling, and just listening to it just gives me really bad chills down my spine. This video was really good, and a lot of people weren't expecting it. Regarding the reaction, Urbanspook was even confused about the whole ordeal, considering he believed he wasn't doing anything different to warrant this reaction. However, I'd like to say that even the smallest things absolutely made it feel leaps and beyond the previous videos. The camera footage and the final sequence with the body cam footage just shows the actual effort that has gone into the video that the other videos lacked personally. There's also this kind of power fantasy with the final sequence, as with all the previous videos, we are shown the incompetency of the police force with taking down the killers. And then here comes this guy who just gets introduced in this video to barge in like a card game and manage to take down two of the most notorious killers with simple ease. This idea of the power fantasy was actually brought to my attention by the YouTube channel We Are Not Alive, so big thank you for making me realize that. Also check that video on the painter as well, it's really good. Now, there's one last video to talk about, so everyone, it's time. It's time, everyone. Everyone, it's time. It's time, everyone, for the finale. The video begins with a recap of what happened last time, where Mona is arrested and brought to justice by the police. However, she seems too happy about being caught. Luckily, she managed to help the police recover missing victims that have yet to be identified. One of them being Emma Riley, who was strangled by her own intestines and had 80 broken bones. Okay, I guess. Another being that of Sean Kane, who was discovered in the sewer system at Mona's lair. I mean, the clue was in the name, you could have just checked. The video then cuts to a news segment about Mona being set the death penalty after bringing a bomb into the courtroom. The news ticker also states how there's new bodies being discovered, a potential copycat, and that of a deadly altercation inside the prison. The video then glitches once again to an interview of that of John and Mona, and this is where the majority of the video takes place. The interview begins with Mona being asked why she decided to commit the atrocities that she and Bill did, and then Mona replies with what I can only describe as doing a Xenos from Final Fantasy XIV.
Well, wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't that be a happy ending? A reason for it all? Tell them I did it for fun.
Would you be happier had I a good reason?
The interview then moves on to her childhood, where she and Bill grew up alongside another kid, Fred Baker, the very same Fred Baker from Meat. She also describes her upbringing at the orphanage, where she was left there after being abandoned by her parents as she was a product of incest. While there, she engaged in zoophilic acts, animal torture, and then just messing around with Fred. After the time in the orphanage, Bill began to get his life straight, but still kept messing around with Mona from time to time. One thing I have noticed throughout this part is how she talked about the relationship between her and Bill. How she was able to order Bill around, telling him what to do. Almost like a dog. In Meat, there were reports of barking when there weren't any dogs in the area or where the victims lived. I'm not going to say anything else, but I will say, maybe, in another life, Bill could have been her trans femme puppy girl with an exploitation kink. However, throughout the conversation, she talks about the real reasons why she started to kill. It's because of a machine? Statues connected to the machine that amplify its effects? And that the police were all on it and wanted the carnage to happen? She also describes who the real person behind these murders are.
What can I say? It's that damn machine. They put it in the ground, and with sonic pressure they manifested a red man inside of me. He's the one who makes the paintings. He gives me a face and a name, and then he tells me who to go and get.
She starts to describe herself as a host, and after talking about how consensual her relationship with Bill was, it then moves on to the bomb situation at the court, where she reveals
You were denied a court hearing because you tried to smuggle a grenade through
my pussy. Fuck yeah, I shoved a grenade up in there. Too bad the guards are even more perverted than I am. Would have gotten away with it. Wouldn't that be something? big pussy boom.
Okay, hear me out. I love this line. This is cinema. This is camp. I love it. I love big pussy boom. Okay, after the greatest line of all time in analog horror history, she finally ends off the interview with a warning.
I'm telling you, if you think this is going to end with me dead, you couldn't be more wrong. It will get worse.
The next words we see afterwards is the reveal that Mona was killed by another prison mate, never getting to live to the execution date. Now, this was a lot. This was a big pussy boom of a law drop. The main thing I want to hone in on is that of the machines she describes. What she's describing doesn't sound real. The police being in on it, that these machines with their sounds and vibrations is making her go insane and kill people. That can't actually be happening, right? Well, one of the things I became aware of while researching this video is that of the influencing machine, an article written by Victor Task, where he describes how a lot of the schizophrenic patients all believed that their thoughts, actions, and sensations were all controlled by a machine. These things that they described were all being done by a group of people, forcing them to commit crimes, and even an example seen by Task and experienced by a female patient is that it manifested itself as an exact form of her own body. Sounds a lot like what Mona is going through, and this whole time, it was the work of a schizophrenic woman. Whether due to being a product of incest or a vile upbringing, this caused her to kill, and to commit the worst crimes people could think of, along with accomplice, a good childhood friend. A sad, unfortunate, and depressing end to a controversial analog horror series. Except everything she said was real. Reports come across all of America where paintings have been located, all with the same handwriting as Mona's. What's worse is that there are people going missing to the point that there's a lockdown of people to prevent anyone else from going missing. The tape finally warns us of all of the paintings located, their names, and for the last 5 minutes, we see just that. Painting after painting is shown to us, all with differing levels of violence, abstractions, and surrealist imagery to show for it. Some titles even repeat onto themselves. As the visuals go on for long enough, the tape begins to corrupt and distort. The music at the start, a genre that has been described by the band themselves as gore grind, begins to dissolve and fully become a harsh noise track. Before, finally, the last painting is shown to us. A self-portrait. So yeah, a lot of people didn't like this episode. From the unsatisfying conclusion to Mona, the writing that some people have described as 4chan musings, and the insane and stupid plot twist of the Red Man, many people thought that this finale sucked ass. Some of the comments have compared this to that of Joker 2, and from what Urbanspook has said, he wanted a unsatisfactory ending to the story, along with a montage of his paintings. And honestly, if that tape ended at the moment we are told about Mona's dead, I would have loved it. Now, it would have been perfect, and some things would stand out like Big Pussy Boom. It would have made a lot more sense to me. There is this person who struggled so immensely due to her upbringing and circumstances, and divulged herself into the horrors of her own mental illness, dragging along the childhood friend with her to this nightmarish ending. However, she wanted it all to end, and to have the state execute her for her crimes. Something to me feels like that's what she might have wanted, and then having that taken away from her, all of the pain and suffering she has caused to others, and having a normal inmate stabbing done to her, would have made it fitting. But instead we get, oh, actually the police was in on it the whole time, and actually the killer was a spooky red man. It kind of just doesn't work, and it just feels like a major retcon to the biggest main plot hole of the series, that being the police being incompetent. After the video dropped, a new wave of videos came out to discuss the final 2 videos in different kinds of ways. Some videos were just funny videos that made fun of the whole thing. Others were just a retrospective of the whole drama and a mediation of how much the analog horror scene has changed since those videos dropped. And one, made by a cool guy called Spooky Bats, talked a bunch about the finale and gave Huff his off-the-cuff thoughts of the whole ordeal. Plus, he made a comment on one of my older videos and shouted me out, so that's cool. Now, at least it was better than the Stranger Things finale.
I mean, the thing that's cool is the giant monster.
So, what are my thoughts on Urbanspook's The Painter? I do see the talent and the artistry in the paintings, but its writing and over-explanation of its gory moments really kill a lot of the potential it has, and that's even ignoring the poor usage of CSA in the series too. If I were to give it a score, 3.5 out of 10. Try again next time. So that's the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please give this video a like, a subscription, leave a comment down below and ring the bell as well. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye bye. Okay, that's what I would say if this video was ending right there and then. I know these jokes are common in these types of videos, but shh. A lot of people do end their videos about the painter here. Maybe even a brief tangent about what could have been better about the whole premise, but this time, I decided to dig deeper. I wanted to know how extreme this genre can get, and how it all compares to the painter. So, we're not done yet.
Go there, boy. Really fast. Something gets in your way.
Extreme horror, also known as extreme cinema for genres that fit outside of the horror mold, is a subgenre that is well known for its extreme and deliberate usage of transgressive acts, taboos, and lots of sex and violence. It started in the modern day thanks to the Grand Guignol, a theatre in Paris which ran from 1897 to the early 1960s, that primarily focused on a lot of gratuitous violence and sex, where the actors were told to make it as real as possible, with them even gauging the effectiveness of the violence by how many attendees fainted. During this time, arguably the first movie that was considered to be extreme cinema was called Un Chien Andalou, released in 1929, and was also co-written by Salvador Dali, which is pretty interesting. Also interesting is that Dali also supported the fascist Spanish regime, so fuck him for that. After Un Chien Andalou, the subgenre has evolved over the decades to include horror movies that show absolute depravity, historical dramas that showcase the debauchery of its main character, iconic queer cinema, and lots of Nazi exploitation movies. Don't know why there was a lot of those, but whatever. There's also other genres that get brought up in conjunction with extreme cinema, with examples like grindhouse cinema and Mondo films, with the classics such as Mondo Carne, Faces of Death, and more extreme series like Traces of Death and Faces of Gore. Also, side note, Mondo Carne, very racist, and the people who also directed it also made Goodbye Uncle Tom, which is really, really racist. Mondo Films is actually something that Urbanspook really liked, as apparently he used some of the images from these films to use for the characters in his series. and even Tina and her interview can be found in the Mondo film True Gore 2 Empire of Madness. Speaking of Urbanspook and his influences, we should talk about one of his biggest inspirations for the painter, and that is the infamous slasher series, Terrifier. Terrifier and Terrifier 2 are slasher movies directed by Damien Leone that depict the killings of an evil demonic entity called Art the Clown. The horror series is essentially known for Art and his mannerisms, the violent kill scenes, and something else that's horrifying: it's terrible writing. For the first movie specifically, the second one is actually alright in the writing department. Honestly, if it wasn't for Art and the actor who plays him, David Howard Thornton, these movies wouldn't really work, but with how entertaining he is and how he carries himself throughout the movies, it really makes the series a lot more memorable as a result that isn't just the kills. I also want to give credit to the special effects, as they are brilliantly done and are really gruesome to look at. With regards to the kills, there's two kills that are known in the general horror scene, which is the kill in Terrifier 2, where he absolutely butchers and scalps a woman before leaving, then coming back to pour bleach and salt into her wounds, and then cutting to her mother finding her body still alive, which Art is cutting her up into bits and pieces. How fun! The other scene happens in the first movie, where Art saws a naked woman who's upside down in half, vertically. The effects are great and all, but the scene kinda comes off pretty poorly considering the woman depicted in this scene is currently suing the director for using her on-screen nudity without her consent and not paying her what she's owed, so that's fun, I guess. These kills and the violent nature of them is something that should absolutely fit in the world of the painter, and Urbanspook has stated several times that the Terrifier franchise is something that he draws inspiration from. And there's even some fan art that he made of the series as well. However, the series itself does have a lot of mean-spiritedness when it comes to some of its kills that I'm not a particularly big fan of. Especially that kill in Terrifier 2, holy fucking shit. Which is why I can't fully recommend it. However, it is something I do advise you to read up on, especially when it comes to discussing the painter, because there's a lot of comparisons that you can have between both of these media series. Something I want to heavily focus upon in this section of the video would be the conversations regarding shock value and a genre that appeared in the early noughties called torture porn. Torture porn is something that has been discussed a lot in conjunction with these kinds of films that regularly use depictions of gore, violence, and sadism for its horror, and has been considered controversial due to these depictions, especially with how a lot of the critics at the time considered it to be without any metaphor, reason, or message behind it. The most well-known movies that usually get grouped with this label would be the Saw franchise, the Hostel franchise, and some one-off movies like House of a Thousand Corpses, Antichrist, and another genre that I'll bring up in just a moment. This label has been used a lot as a pejorative to criticize the meaningless violence depicted in these kinds of films, but when you actually watch and engage with the medium after looking at what the critics say about it, most of the time it just comes off as over-exaggerating the violence in them. There's a great book called Torture Porn: Popular Horror After Saw that goes into detail about this topic that I recommend you check out. In the book, Steve Jones talks about how the label itself is kind of bad and has been used on literally anything, such as comedies like Jackass, action movies like Casino Royale, and even television shows like 24 and Dexter. Very interesting. He also notes similar phrases that has been used in the past, like horror porn and gore porn, and as such, it dilutes the phrase to essentially not mean anything at all. As Steve states, torture porn is in motion. It is intertwined with wider conceptual networks that impact on its various meanings. Torture porn's objectors have typically used the term to denunciate the subgenre, but also to delimit texts and fix their meanings. The two endeavors are incompatible. Torture porn can instead be utilized as a starting point to stimulate engagement by connecting filmic content to the concepts that underpin the term. A lot of people do kind of ignore what the film is actually trying to say and discuss and focus purely on the violence that it depicts, which is something I've seen a lot in horror media. For example, Saw is usually considered to be very blunt with the philosophy of its main killer, John Kramer. The whole point of why he puts these people through these traps is a way of cleansing themselves of their quote-unquote sins. However, a common complaint with the franchise is how wishy-washy this morality judgment is, as there's multiple examples of the victims in these traps are just people who self-harm, for example, and that is something that Saw X actually interrogates and discusses. Another point against this message being ignored for the violence would be the new French extremity movement, which includes movies like High Tension, Inside, and most notably, Martyrs, a movie about survivors' guilt, and even a movie about pain itself. There's a ton of discussions about the themes of the movie and about how it presents violence and pain as a kind of religion and acts almost like a philosophical movie under the torture and horror. You may think to yourself, actually, Martyrs is a different kind of movie. It's only just the exception, but not the rule. But to that I say, a lot of the critics at the time had labeled it as torture porn, and simply wrote it off as such. No engagement of the inner discussions of what the movie was trying to say, or what we all can learn and understand from it, just that it had gratuitous violence, and that's bad. This is also something that Irreversible and other Gaspar Noé movies that had to deal with as well, and I'm sure there's countless of other examples out there too. This label is something that the painter has been called several times. People had called it torture porn or gore porn in the comments of these reaction videos to the series. Of course, they are right to their own opinion about this, but I feel like there needs to be more to this critique of the series than just simply slapping the torture porn label on it and calling it a day. Many people have done just that to not only poorly written films, but to genre-defining films as well. The painter has a major issue regarding the build-up of its violence because, well, you know, it happens straight away. But honestly, some of the best examples of extreme horror have a brilliant build-up in tension, storytelling, and character development to eventually end up with a scene that absolutely shocks the whole movie. One of these examples that I think fits well is the 1981 movie Possession, starring Isabelle Adjani and Sam Neill. It's well known for its most iconic scene, which is the subway scene, but the reason why it works is how the story gets there. Throughout the whole movie, you witness a couple at the end of their relationship. They are mutually destructive, using their child as a pawn in their own chess match, and both characters are essentially trying to hide secrets from each other, and even to the point of using violence on each other or on themselves. Before the subway scene, you see Sam Neill's character discover a tape, and he watches to see his wife force a child into a painful ballet position. And in a confession to the cameraman, she talks about how faith and chance are fighting within her. After he watches the tape, she returns home and finally talks about her struggles with faith and chance with him, while also trying her best to take off her wedding ring, almost like it's attacking her. And then, the subway scene happens. This scene is recontextualized as her miscarrying faith, and as such, having chance be her guiding light. Which is why she has sex with a tentacle monster. Do not ask me why. The reason why the subway scene works is because of the escalating tension throughout the entire movie, which then leads into that release in the form of the subway scene. There's so much emotional weight to this movie that I have to give it a ton of credit for, as apparently the director was going through a really bad divorce that heavily influenced the movie. The acting is also incredible as well, since both Sam and especially Isabelle are giving it their all. Also, I want to shout out the fucking German guy. He's really fucking insane. I love him. But now, imagine this. The movie is just a normal melodrama. Nothing really happens in it. The acting is subpar, there's no character depth, or any emotional weight. And then, the subway scene, as it is shown in the movie, is shown to us in the first 20 to 30 minutes. You would be like, wait, what the fuck was that? And you may even find it comical. That's essentially what The Painter does in its more salacious episodes, like in The Walls and Pigs. Its tension is just kind of dropped on you without any warning, and you just kind of have to sit there and try and take it seriously. There's examples where the big horror scene is really good, like the body cam sequence in Hell and the phone call in Family, but it's far and few between. I also want to discuss something about The Painter that nobody really wants to talk about, and for that, I'll talk about another movie within this genre that touches on these ideas. Audition is a Japanese horror movie released in 1999 and is directed by Takashi Miike, who directed extreme horror classics like Visitor Q, Ichi the Killer, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Diamonds Unbreakable. I'm not even joking, he's directed a whole bunch of movies ranging from like a Dragon, family films, that one Ace Attorney movie, and an upcoming movie featuring Charlie XCX. Also, Charlie XCX was in a Faces of Death reboot, which was, I find, really funny. Audition is about a widower, Aoyama, who tries to find a replacement for his dead wife via an audition. Through this, we meet the focus for this section, Asami Yamasaki. It is revealed pretty early that she had forged her references, but despite this deception, he still chases after Asami. After spending time with her, getting to know her, and spending a weekend away together, she goes missing, and Aoyama follows a dark path, full of pain, horror, and murder. The final scene of the movie is where it is mostly known for, where Asami drugs Aoyama with a paralytic agent and begins to torture him with needles, and eventually ending with her cutting his foot off with a piano wire. Critics, both Japanese and Western, love this film, but the film has started to be looked at closer with a more feminist lens in more recent years. There's been connections with how Asami presents herself in the titular audition, wearing white to showcase her purity, soft-spoken, timid, and sweet demeanor. That is until we see her at the end of the movie, wearing a white shirt with a black leather apron. The abuse that she had suffered through when she was a child has made her into the monster that we see her in the final sequence. And with how Aoyama used false pretenses to be with Asami, how he wanted a obedient and docile wife, and how he ignored all of the warning signs just to be with her, it's no wonder why Asami thought he was no better than any other man in her life. In a way, this feminist outlook reframes the movie into a critique of this objectification of women and how a beautiful woman can hide dark and horrifying secrets. Now, let's compare Asami with Mona. Yes, I am doing this, shut up. Mona is someone who rejects all beauty standards, never wears makeup, and only wears a plain white gown that could be mistaken for a hospital gown. She's also very androgynous, and also has a cleft lip that is shown in some of her images. With that cleft lip though, there is a lot of baggage that comes with it, considering facial disfigurement and deformities that has been always used in horror in a very ableist way. She is also very evil. No fucking shit. Committing the most heinous of crimes and crossing all of the taboos, even as a child. She is someone who some people in fandom spaces call a trauma bitch. In Hazel's excellent video about Elfin Lied, she describes it as the kind that's relatable in all the ways she's unsympathetic and dysfunctional, ripe for the picking even when the source material misuses her or squanders her potential. Like so many great feminine or queer monsters in the past, her rage is cathartic even when it's not communicated to the audience as moral or relatable. She is a product of circumstance and the society she was born into, but her actions are still her own and still have consequences. She is also, on some level, a power fantasy. She is strong and willing and able to fight back. There's also a sense of empowerment in the identification with her victimhood. Not that her victimhood should be empowering, but there's a kind of strength and unity in being able to identify and empathize with her. We Are Not Alive also brought up that quote in their video about the painter. You should probably watch it. I told you to watch it already. You better do. Now, there are major differences between Asami and Mona. For one, Asami definitely didn't do any sexual violence to her victims. She did kill that dog though, so yeah, just kick her down those stairs. Another difference between the two is that Mona is kind of an empty vessel up until the final episode, where she just talks about how she likes to torture animals or something like that. She never experienced anything that caused her to do the violence onto people, but rather she was just kinda like that. And also, Urbanspook has stated that he made Mona very androgynous and only revealed her gender up until the 8th episode. But what Mona represents to me is more of a rejection and a disregarding of the social constructs that are placed onto women, and is allowed to commit violence onto others, whether it's within our acceptable boundaries of violence or not. The relationship between her and Bill is also a role reversal as well. Mona is the brains and Bill is the brawn. While in most cases, the women are simply shown in horror movies are depicted as docile, sexualized, lacking agency, and simply food to be fed to the slaughterhouse, unlike Mona, who is the slaughterhouse itself. And now, I want to circle back onto the discussion of CSA in the painter. Everyone doesn't like it, and as discussed earlier, it just doesn't work. It's blunt, it lacks connection between the victim and the audience for us to truly empathize with. But out of all of the extreme cinema movies that I want to discuss, compare, and contrast with, it's this one. So, let's talk about Mysterious Skin. Mysterious Skin is a 2004 drama directed by Greg Araki, which is a movie adaptation of the book with the same name. It usually gets mentioned around in this extreme cinema subgenre due to its depiction and discussion of CSA and its long-term effects, which has been praised by several psychologists for how accurate it is. It's a movie that always has the focus of its victims, as the perpetrator appears for the first 10 to 15 minutes before leaving the town and the movie itself, but you always feel his presence. One kid, Neil, turns to sex work as a way to cope with his trauma, while the other kid, Brian, represses it and believes he had been kidnapped by aliens. Throughout the story, we see them grow and being their own individuals, making connections, whether it's through the line of work that Neil engages in, or with the friendship Brian has with another woman, who also believes in the same thing as he does, but still encourages him to discover the truth. Honestly, it's a really brilliant movie that discusses how trauma shapes us, and the way it's shot with its long stares into the camera and almost this nostalgic outlook on their adolescence and growing up, even if a horrific crime took place. Honestly, this is the movie I want to spoil the least, because I want you to go into this movie with just the basic premise and experience yourself what a brilliant movie this is. While the painter focuses on the killers and their actions with little regard to its victims, Mysterious Skin does the exact opposite and actively forces you to see how this traumatic moment can have major effects to its victims, their families, and the bonds that they create. The soundtrack is a mixture of acoustic ambient guitars and hazy shoegaze tracks from the likes of Ride, Slowdive, and the Cocteau Twins, and the acting from everyone is just phenomenal, especially both Brian, played by Brady Corbett, and Neil, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Oh, by the way, Brady also directed The Brutalist, which I find really interesting. Anyway, please watch Mysterious Skin. You honestly won't regret it. I spent most of the time focusing on the horror movies that are considered a part of extreme cinema, but there's another avenue that's more disturbing and violent that I want to touch upon, and that's the realm of extreme horror books. Extreme horror, splatterpunk, whatever you want to call it, is something I wanted to deep dive into for a long time, and well, due to this video, I thought it'd be a really good idea to do just that. So over the last couple of months, I've dived into books like Womb, Dead Inside, and the work of May Leeds, especially her most popular work, Fluids. These books range from the most horrifying and disgusting depictions of violence, gore, and several taboos to really interesting character developments between the main characters of the story. One that worked really well for me is Womb. The short sections where it describes terrible and shocking things within a single motel room is framed around a conversation between a sex worker and her client, and you can really feel the chemistry building up between them that kept me gripped to my seat while waiting to see what messed up thing is next. However, there are some major issues with the book that keeps me from recommending it to you. One of the big issues is that there's a lot of spelling mistakes and formatting errors in the book that do distract from the story being told. And then another thing is how the black characters are depicted in the story. One of the lines that one of the characters say is literally just a copy and pasted stereotypical black person phrase that really took me out of it. Also a lot of N-word usage that I'm not very comfortable with. I am not well versed with the other depictions of the other black characters, but there's a really great review on Goodreads that I do recommend you look through, as it does fully describe the issues from a black perspective. A book that I will highly recommend is Fluid by May Leeds, a story about a toxic lesbian couple, one of them being a trans woman, and the absolute horror that they get up to. It's a really great book that has multiple points of view and feels very stream of consciousness that I feel fits the book really well. I love how the trans woman character Dahlia, who escapes her family to be with her girlfriend Lauren, tries to impress her by exaggerating the means of which she escaped. It first shows off as her just setting fire to her closet and escaping, but later she describes it as her setting fire to the whole house with her mother inside. It's a really good way of showing how being around Lauren is warping her morals that I like. There's a ton of violence, both sexual and physical, and like the book says, a ton of fluids. I do recommend Fluids, but I will say I am biased in this, being that I am a fan of her previous work on YouTube, that being her channel Next Fears, but she's actually been doing YouTube again under the channel Arsenic Dealer that I recommend checking out if you're more into exploring extreme horror novels. Also, while they aren't technically splatterpunk or extreme horror, I do want to shout out Ryu Murakami and his novel In the Miso Soup that is an absolute must-read. And I've also been enjoying Clive Barker's Books of Blood, that does mix the same psychosexual horror that the other books previously mentioned delve into as well. I also want to talk about video games that use similar extreme horror tropes that I do want to discuss briefly. You have your usual suspects like your Manhunt franchise, the FMV point-and-click game Harvester, the horror game designed by Roberta Williams, Phantasmagoria, as well as a sequel that I do recommend checking out as well. A lot of Clive Barker vibes to it. Another game I want to shout out would be the game File Exhumed, made by Final Goal Games. I'll be brief with my talk, as there's an excellent video done by PowerPack that covers the game in much more depth, but I honestly would like to mention it in this video as it delves into topics such as women in horror spaces, male entitlement, and the violence that is inflicted on them. It's a really great game, and once again, please check out PowerPack's video on the topic. There's also the Japanese visual novels that delve into violence and sexual themes as well, especially with the Iroguro scene with games like Saya no Uta and Gore Screaming Show. There's also a scene of Western visual novels that have started to be developed in recent years that focuses on the term toxic yuri. These games range from relationships that have a couple of arguments every now and then, to some that fit right into the Eroguro scene. One of them I highly recommend is the visual novel Passenger X Princess. It is something that fits in the extreme side of the toxic yuri label, as the relationship is extremely abusive, but has a genuine heart and emotional depth to it. It's also very sexual. It is an 18+ game after all. If you're at all interested in the small subgenre, then please check out the article done by Mothership that talks about it in further detail. And finally, the last game I want to talk about, and actually gets brought up a ton regarding extreme horror, and especially with the painter, and that's The Coffin of Andy and Lele. It's fine. I have enjoyed the game from what I have played of it. The toxic codependent nature of the siblings is something that has a lot of depth to it, and while the writing can be very blunt at times, it does have a good amount of humor that I kind of enjoy. It doesn't take itself too seriously at times, which I think fits well, but it's also not that gory or bloody unlike the others that I've talked about. However, the main complaint of the game is that it depicts incest, which I think fits well within the codependency of the siblings. I don't think it's that bad compared to some of the other shit that I've read, but I do recommend you give it a try at least, if it's right up your alley. There is one more thing I want to focus my attention on regarding everything surrounding the painter and the conversation about it, but before we can do that, I think it's time to have a history lesson. During the early 1980s, a craze was starting to build up in the UK about horror films that was being branded as video nasties. This campaign was birthed from the National Viewers and Listeners Association and its founder, Mary Whitehouse. She was known for raising complaints regarding the level of sex and violence that was being shown on TV in the 1960s, like Benny Hill and Doctor Who, describing it as tea time brutality for tots. There are other examples of her crusades, such as her raising a case against Gays News for blasphemy, claimed that a play about the Roman invasion was in violation of the Sexual Offences Act, even though she never saw the play, and even, at one point, privately talked to Margaret Thatcher in the late 80s to ban sex toys. I am not making this up, this actually happened. One of these major crusades were the video nasties, spurred on by the reporting in the UK newspapers and marketing done by the video distributors to promote their works, such as putting their most explicit scenes as box art, putting out full-page advertisements in the paper, and even writing to Mary herself, posing as a concerned parent about the horrors within the movie Cannibal Holocaust. This led to the Conservative MP Graham Wright to draft up and submit the Videos Recording Act in 1984, which placed an age rating on 2 movies which would require cuts, edits, and even be refused classification, effectively banning it as a result. Before all of this though, police raided video stores to seize horror films through a list made by the director of the public prosecutions, which included movies like The Driller Killer, Faces of Death, I Spit on Your Grave, The Last House on the Left, and even The Evil Dead. This whole situation has been referred to as a moral panic, as a lot of the opponents against these video nasties believed that these movies could corrupt its intended audience, cause copycat killers based on the videos, and even in a talk with Graham Wright himself, could even affect dogs too.
Those are unacceptable. I believe that research is taking place and it will show that these films not only affect young people, but I believe they affect adults as well. It goes far too far.
What the fuck is this?
At the time, not many people tried to fight against this moral panic. There are some exceptions with it, like the works of Martin Barker, who defended video nasties and was very anti-censorship. He even went on TV to debate Mary Whitehouse as well.
I think what's happened is that the people who are against this bill have got themselves all tied up with this academic approach to the word censorship, the dirtiest word in the English language.
See, what worries me is that Mary Whitehouse, having lost a series of cases, immediately declares a law wrong. Let's take an example of a case where she...
One second, Mary.
Excuse me, Mary. You threw a lot of questions at me. I'm going to put one back to you in a moment. One of the cases she lost was a very serious film dealing how male aggression is produced. It was a film called Scum. It was a film about the effects of Borstal on its inmates, a very serious film, which happens to use violence in order to show its message. Excuse me, Mary.
Well,
don't interrupt, because I didn't interrupt you.
Well, this will have to be cut.
And what I find interesting is that we have listened very patiently to the arguments put by those who support the bill. As soon as we try to reply, actually a great deal of heckling comes in, because we actually have a more complex case to put. The fact is that violence per se is neither good nor bad. It is the use to which it's put, it is the context in which it's seen, and home is not necessarily the worst context in which to see violence.
There's a great documentary on the topic called Video Nasties, Moral Panic, Censorship, and Videotape that I recommend you check out whenever you can. It has great interviews with people who defended the Video Nasties, the MP that put the bill through, and horror directors, including the director of The Descent, which is pretty cool. Also, fun fact, Martin Barker has been very influential in anti-racist discussions, like coining the term New Racism in the early 1980s, and helped conduct really great media audience research in the 2000s that can still be felt to this day. Really fucking cool guy. However, a lot of people are under the assumption that this was a unique case within the UK when it comes to this kind of moral panic. But there's other examples worldwide that I can point to. There's Jack Thompson's crusade during the 1990s, where he infamously targeted video games as being violent. Tipper Gore with the Parents Music Resource Center and their target of heavy metal and hip-hop, McCarthyism and the Red Scare, the AIDS pandemic, and with more recent examples such as the trans grooming panic that is still ongoing to this day. All of these moral panics involved censoring ideas, people, videos, books, and music that the status quo deemed immoral, transgressive, gross, and dangerous. Some of these media are innocent, others are the prime examples of what the opposition considers to be their main targets, while others are just beautiful pieces of work that speak to so many people. All of these panics are based on the idea that concepts and ideas that clash against the status quo, that are transgressive, that are automatically immoral, that they are worth censoring, and to be locked away, never to be seen again. The biggest example would be degenerate art, an exhibition in 1937, and a term that was coined by the Nazi Party in Germany to label and describe modern art. This could include art movements such as Dadaism, Cubism, Surrealism, and what the Nazis claimed with these paintings were that they were a, quote, insult to German feeling. This, of course, included a lot of Jewish, black, queer, and communist artists as well, but they framed it as these artists were morally corrupt and were what Nazi Germany should reject. Transgressive medium is always something that struck fear into the status quo, whether it be the works of historical weird freaky guy Marquis de Sade, or the philosophical teachings of George Bataille, both of which dealt with transgressive themes. There's also fantastic works that break the molds of the media and the genre that they inhabit. One performance piece that I think about a lot is Chris Burden's Shoot, a performance in which Chris got shot by a rifle to feel and experience what it is like to actually get shot, compared to what is usually shown on TV, especially with media coverage of the Vietnam War. Transgressive art is something that I love in media recently. Books, movies, many other media, ideas that talk about ideas that are against the norm and delve into serious topics. So, the fuck does this have to do with the painter? There has been this trend with how people reacted to the painter and similar media to it that has me concerned. Some of these comments are how worried they are for the creator, that the art and the ideas he creates are an endorsement, that him and his fans are evil people, labeling it as fetish material, claiming how him putting art that he made as an artist as his profile picture is somehow a red flag. There are other comments out there who do actually focus on why the series isn't good and are fans of genres like Splatterpunk and Dev Dove Do Not Eat fanfiction, but the majority of it is just these weird comments. A lot of these videos that cover the Pena talk about how it's the most controversial, the most disturbing, the worst, and some of them are just YouTube clickbait titles. It does reflect how people perceive the series as a whole. Something I discussed earlier is how the term torture porn has been used to label transgressive movies and to not engage with the deeper themes of the movie due to that label. These titles are just doing the exact same thing, and also adding onto the drama with Urbanspook. You get people who only focus on the violence and gore of the series and not engage with it fully. There's also the accusation of the Pena being fetish material, and I feel like it's kind of reductive, and I do get why people think it. I mean, I've seen that Q&A image, it's fucking horrendous. However, at the same time, the painter blends the ideas of kink and gore and horror all together in a psychosexual manner. It's very similar to how Clive Barker does it in his work, and I don't see anyone claiming that Clive Barker's work is fetish material, but I don't know. Now, this isn't a video telling you that you're wrong for not liking the Pena. I have made it very clear that I'm not a fan of the series, and I also believe that it's fine to not like this kind of horror. It's not for everyone. But I feel like it's a different story to say, I don't like this kind of horror, therefore this shouldn't exist. And that's something I really do not agree with at all. Throughout the research of this video, I keep coming back to this article called Serb Your Enthusiasm, Anti-fandom and a Serbian Film. In it, Martin Ian Smith conducted a study where he asked hundreds of people who watched the movie what they thought of it, the rating they gave, why they watched it, how they watched it, and studied the most negative responses. From there, he was able to gather how there was this premeditated anti-fandom in which people who knew about its contents still watched it and still had a negative opinion on the movie. Some who watched it even said that it bolstered their support for the movie's censorship, and some participants also used references to mental illness or psychopaths to refer to any person who enjoyed it as a pejorative, completely disregarding the messaging of the film itself. Anti-fandom isn't a new concept. They've been around for quite some time, especially in online spaces. Movies such as Twilight had such a negative reception back in the day, and there's more recent examples with it such as Steven Universe, the works of VisiPop, and hell, even Pokemon can even fit in this anti-fandom discussion too. The Painter, in my opinion, also has an anti-fandom, but not to the same level as the others, but I still find it important to touch upon. The rhetoric that anti-fandoms use can very easily collide with the concepts of morality policing, the ideas that these concepts are too extreme, whether they are handled well or not, and that they need to be censored. In many cases, a lot of what people could consider morale would just be conservative talking points, or even in some cases, fascist rhetoric. When discussions about harsh topics are silenced because you don't like them or you don't like how a certain series handles them, it does other media that does it better a major disservice. I can understand people's fears with the concept of transgression, considering how the right wing has essentially co-opted it to spread their own talking points, but transgression has been used in the past by left-wing groups in the 60s to push their own progressive ideas. I talked a lot about these topics in my Fan Games of Lazy Games video, where a lot of the videos I covered used these subject matters to create their own story. I even had people in my comments talk about how writing these kinds of stories helped them cope and deal with the trauma that they had. If these ideas were completely censored, then those videos that I covered, and hell, even Lazy Games itself, wouldn't exist at all. Just because something did it poorly doesn't mean you need to end the discussion right there and then. There's a small fandom within the painter that is trying to reclaim Mona from the series. There's remakes of the painter that are being done in better light. Art can be iterative, art can be subjective, art can be transgressive, and art can also be safe. But all of it matters. In a time where analog horror is being filled with AI-generated content farms such as Textify and Dead Signal VHS, I am happy that the painter exists. I may not like how it's done, how it's constructed, or even like the person behind it all, but I am happy that something like this exists out there. So please, create art that seeks to push the boundaries of the genre. Create art that showcases the horror in humanity. Create art that helps people feel seen and heard when no other media does so. Discuss art that transgresses in a nuanced manner, and most importantly, talk about the media you find uncomfortable, because maybe you could find something that's worth cherishing.
Tell me more about Bill. He was the kind of kid. There was a sundown once. You know, one of them really red ones. I remember he pointed at it and said, "That's where the devil is." Then he took my hand and we ran towards it, like two kids in the devil's backyard. Did we ever catch up? Damn. You tell me. Big pussy boom.